Well, hello there.
Hey, everybody.
Friends, lovers, thank you for joining us. Oh, were we about to do something there?
Well, we are moving, but the screen is not.
Oh.
So I don't know.
Well, what the heck?
Yeah, we are...
Hold on a second, folks. Huh. How very strange. Sorry about that, folks. A little bit of a tweak here. Hello, friends. Hello, lovers. Hello, technical gurus who are out there saying, you know, I bet what they need to do is adjust the rheostat and replug in the orthogonal device. And thank you for joining us. We're glad you are here on this fine day for episode 179 of 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. And today is October 15th. This is a very special day. This will be a very special show. You know, we're living in hard times. Hard times,
like the Cro-Mags say.
Yeah, like that tune. Right. Challenging times. We have been, Amy and I, and you, we have been involved in the ARC UK, the Ayn Rand Center UK channel all week talking about the war, about what's going on in Israel right now. This is serious stuff, and we've been doing some really serious shows. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight, but the whole point of tonight's show is this is not going to be that. Now, it's not that we're not going to take that stuff seriously, but we're going to talk about, well, but why? Why do we take it seriously? Because there's all sorts of good news this week that matters.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm not going to set that up anymore. I'm just getting into it. Today is Sunday, October 15th, 2023, the 288th day of this, your best year yet. After today, you have 77 days remaining, 77 days left in 2023 to make this an outstanding year. Christmas is just 71 days away. Thanksgiving is 39 days away. We've already got to decide, are we going to be serving turkey or prime rib this year?
Or pork crown roast.
Pork crown roast, that was a winner. And Halloween, 16 days, 2 weeks,
Woo!
And 2 days.
Hot stuff.
Halloween right around the corner. And on this date, real quick, because it is October 15th, a lot of October 15th goodness going on. This was the date in 1917. World War I time. Yes, it was. This was the date that the dancer and spy, in fact, double agent Mata Hari was executed. Mata Hari. Dancer, courtesan, alleged spy Mata Hari is executed for espionage by a French firing squad. So I guess this is back when France was still, tough guys. She first came to Paris in 1905, found fame as a performer of Asian-inspired dances. Asian-inspired, we think of Mata Hari as extremely exotic, but in reality, Mata Hari was born in a small town in northern Holland, and her real name was Margaretha Gertruda Zelle. Mata Hari.
That's what you say.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, the story was told that she was born in a sacred Indian temple and taught ancient dances by a princess who gave her the name Mata Hari, meaning Eye of the Day in Malay. Hari acquired her superficial knowledge of Indian and Javanese dances when she lived for several years in Malaysia with her former husband, who was a Scot in the Dutch colonial army. Regardless of her authenticity, she did pack dance halls and opera houses from Russia to France, mostly because her show consisted of her removing one piece of clothing after another until she was nude. But she found there was more money in spying than in dancing. Accused of revealing details of the Allies' new superweapon, the tank, resulting in the deaths of thousands of soldiers. She was convicted, sentenced to death on October 15th. This date, she refused a blindfold and was shot to death by a firing squad. Yeah, crazy stuff. And speaking of war, the connections to war. War is war. War is hell. But the history of war, I think, gives us a better handle on what's going on. 1965, on this date, October 15th, is when the demonstration started in the United States, burning draft cards. Now, I wasn't quite old enough to remember that, but I remember it being in the news, and it went on through the 70s, and I got to hear about it as a little kid. Draft card burning demonstrations, staged by the student-run National Coordinating Committee to End the War in Vietnam, a war that should have been ended before it started. Some of the first public burnings of draft cards in the United States took place on this date. This is also the date on which the I Love Lucy show debuted. Yes. Premiering on this day, 1951, lasting until May of 1957, the comedy spearheaded by Lucille Ball as the bubbly, aspiring star, Lucy. Remember, she was always trying to get her husband to bring her onto his show, his entertainment show. Starred with her real-life husband, Desi Arnaz, as singer and band leader Ricky Ricardo. The show took America by storm, the most watched television show in the country at the time, even becoming the first show to end while at the top of the Nielsen ratings. Go out while you're on top. Very cool. Real quick, it's National Lemon Bar Day. Why do I mention National Lemon Bar Day? Well, if you're not following us on Facebook, you should be, because you would see the pictures of the outstanding event that we attended at the Ford House, which is the estate of Edsel and Eleanor Ford, Grosse Pointe Shores, Michigan. In St. Clair Shores, Michigan, right next door to Grosse Pointe Shores in Michigan. And they were serving lemon bars, among other things. And I've got to say, they weren't great.
No, they were... They were a pale shadow of what a lemon bar should be.
Yeah, I was going to recommend that people find a good lemon bar on this date. But I think, Amy, you said you could bake your own.
I know I could, and it would be great.
Yeah. This holiday, National Lemon Bar Day, a long-standing holiday. This holiday has been around for a total of 4 years. You know, some of these holidays are silly, and this is one of them. Michael McCarthy founded the holiday in 2019 after concluding a bake sale and discovering that a significant number of the attendees of his bake sale had never tried a lemon bar. So if you've never had a lemon bar, go out and find one. It's kind of along the lines of like a key lime pie, but with more of that, like in a pan baked, a little harder bottom. A good key lime pie is a beautiful thing. A good lemon bar is a beautiful thing. Enough of that. Now we got to get on to the birthdays.
I want to talk more about lemon bars.
What do you want to say about lemon? Share, please.
Well,
I catch up on the chat.
I looked at this. The main ingredient of the lemon part of the bar, because you've got the crust.
Yes, and then you've got the lemon curd crust, custard.
Yeah, like the lemon curd. So basically, that's egg. It's so it's sugar, flour, eggs, lemon juice. I would put in lemon zest. I'm looking at a few recipes here. If you don't know what lemon zest is, find out, because it's the best.
Take a fine grater, a steel grater that grates things into a fine consistency, and take that to a lemon. In other words, lemon zest is the lemon peel, but ground into a very fine... It's hard to say what the consistency of lemon zest is. I guess that's why they have a special word for it.
Well, it's just the finely grated lemon peel. That's
right.
What it is. So,
but you're not grating it into a powder because it's moist.
No.
But it's not really a liquid. It's
like little slivers, like kind of like saffron is, you could say, is.
Yeah, it's zesty.
Yeah. So
Christopher Smith says custard. See, the problem is there are places in the world where the word custard or pudding
or curd
doesn't mean what it means in the United States.
Yeah.
How can you have your meat or how can you have any pudding when you haven't finished your meat? And we're like, what are you talking about? But in England, meat meant the meal, the dinner part of dinner. And pudding
Yeah.
was a generic word for dessert. So.
Yeah, and get this. Now, the crust, it's a shortbread crust. So it's kind of like a cookie crust in that way. And it's very buttery, and at least in these good recipes that I'm looking up right now.
Yeah, and sitting at the bottom of a lemon pudding, it has a little different consistency than like a shortbread cookie, but it is that flavor and kind of that consistency.
Yes, yes. I do kind of wonder how it differs from key lime pie, though.
Besides the fact that one has a pie crust and one has a shortbread crust?
Yes.
It's a good question. Key lime pie to me doesn't taste as much like lime as lemon bars taste like lemon.
That's true.
So I think the key lime pie is always sweeter, and it's got a little more of that slightly cream cheesy flavor, whereas a lemon bar is more of a generic pudding flavor.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I have for...
Is that enough on lemon bars?
Lemon bars.
Are we good?
Yeah.
So it's National Lemon Bar Day, and again, this is a long-standing tradition, a whole 4 years since that was declared by a guy who did a bake sale and said, how come nobody's ever had these before? What's wrong with you people? So if you've never had these before, what's wrong with you people? No, I mean, go out and get yourself a lemon bar. Now, as I say, onto the birthdays. A huge part of what we want to talk about today is birthdays. It's happy birthday to the late Friedrich Nietzsche. Because Nietzsche is peachy.
Yes, look into the abyss, and the abyss will look into you.
That's
or
right.
Something.
Yes, be careful. Be careful that when you look into the abyss doesn't look back on you. There are better Nietzsche quotes than that. I know there's, if it doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger. That which does not kill me. But there are good Nietzsche quotes.
Well,
so in my show notes,
maybe.
which are already posted in the description on YouTube, long version, all the links, everything that we're talking about today. There's a link to the Gutenberg Press, which is the free online, out-of-copyright stuff. Great documents from, usually more than 75 years old, which is why they're free and freely available. You can also go to LibriVox and get the audio version of Thus Spake, or Spoke Zarathustra. So how's this for a quote from Thus Spake? How can one praise and glorify a nation as a whole? Even among the Greeks, it was the individuals that counted. The Greeks are interesting and extremely important because they reared such a vast number of great individuals. How was this possible? The question is one which ought to be studied. I am interested only in the relations of a people to the rearing of the individual man. And among the Greeks, the conditions were unusually favorable for the development of the individual. Unquote, the man, Friedrich Nietzsche. So kudos to Freddie Nietzsche and his memory on this date of his birth.
And, I used to be a Nietzschean existentialist before I before I discovered Ayn Rand and I became an objectivist. I was a Nietzschean existentialist. I would go around and be like, I'm a Nietzschean existentialist, everybody. You don't know what that means, and because you're all sheeple. It was ridiculous.
Quit picking on the lesser man.
But yeah, Nietzsche is such a mixed bag. He's more style than content, in my opinion. He really is. He's just, he's all dramatic. He's like Broadway philosophy is what it is.
He's big, he's bold, he's contentious. He died young because of the way he lived.
Here's a quote. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star.
That's right. You gotta be a little bit crazy, says Nietzsche.
Give birth to that dancing star.
He had passion. Unfortunately, he took that as an epistemological standard, but he had passion. You gotta give him some props for that. Because, the last couple of shows we talked about music quite a bit, and it was Nietzsche who said, without music, life would be a mistake.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a fun quote.
Damn right. No, Nietzsche was peachy. He was not right. I mean, as a philosopher. No, as a philosopher, and some of you have preceded me here already in the chat, if you want a philosopher who was right about everything, fortunately, we can say happy birthday to another philosopher, one who is still alive, who is still with us today, retired, not practicing, but he is out there. Leonard Peikoff is 90 years old today.
Woo!
So a huge shout out to the man who wrote The Dim Hypothesis and Opar, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, the Ominous Parallels, and all of those in reverse chronological order.
And did a number of all just amazing lectures about everything.
Every time I think I've got a handle on every lecture series Leonard Peikoff has ever done, I remember another one. A whole series of lectures that he gave that end up being courses in and of themselves.
I need to re-listen to Certainty and Happiness.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Great. It was originally presented at conceptual conferences, and then he gave a shorter version at the Ford Hall Forum, and the recording I have of it is great because it's the longer version from conceptual conferences and then the Q&A from both. And that is super cool. And yeah, we would go to Second Renaissance Books, send in their little mailer with the catalog they sent out, and then eventually you could do that on the internet. And you send them money and they send you these cassette tapes, and of course you young people are like, yeah. It's all on the internet now, and most of it's free. So, yeah, look, especially take advantage of those bigger courses. Man, those are powerful, and they were incredibly expensive, too. The ones like Objectivism Through Induction.
Yes.
Good stuff. Happy birthday, Dr. Peikoff, 90 years old. We've had the honor of meeting him a couple times and speaking to him a few times.
Yeah.
And great moments that we will always remember.
Yes.
Got a couple of his signatures on books and whatnot. I told the story before about his essay, The Analytic-Synthetic Dichotomy, which was the one that pushed me over the cliff, that turned me into an objectivist. It answered the last big question I had in philosophy. So I asked him to sign my copy of Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, and he started out by saying, well, no, I don't sign other people's books. I said, well, I understand that, Dr. Peikoff, but your essay in this book, and yes, you do have an essay in this book, was the one that really answered the last of the big philosophic questions for me. So he did sign it, and we have that. So happy birthday, happy 90th, Dr. Peikoff. A very special day for all the Ayn Rand fans, especially the objectivists. Sorry for those of you who are not objectivists that we take time to honor the guy. The guy's amazing. If you haven't already, you've got to read his essays. Go to peikoff.com. That's the link I stuck in the show notes, because from there you can find everything.
And here's a question. I wonder if Leonard Peikoff has any plans to write a biography of him for himself, or somebody might write it.
I think he's answered that, and his answer was no.
No?
No, because it's not interesting to him. He's already lived through it. There is a good DVD, and maybe the video you can find out there called Leonard Peikoff in His Own Words.
Yeah.
My co-host on the Wednesday show, James Valiant, was one of the producers involved in that. And that's a good one, but I know what you're looking for. You're looking for something more like Shoshana's doing for Ayn Rand.
Right.
Something bigger, bolder, covers everything.
Right. And
I don't know that that's coming. James would probably be the one to do it, because he studied with Leonard for so long.
But I want to know more things about Leonard Peikoff. Like, he went to Hawaii with his daughter, and I guess they went cliff diving together or something. And I'm like, Leonard Peikoff is cliff diving. That's amazing. Yeah. That's great. I want to know.
Yeah, just when you think you've really got a handle on the guy, you find out that he did that too. So, yes, a heck of a guy. Now, I mentioned we were not going to set aside the news of the day entirely. And so let me talk about the shows we did this week. On Wednesday, James Valiant and I did our Wednesday show. Everything else on the Ayn Rand Center UK has been put on hold. So I had no Thursday show. There's no TV talk. There's none of the shows except for the Daily Objective and the reality show, which are the two weekday shows that we do. But we did do the Peikoff episode of Keeping It Real, and the topic was coping with evil. James and I talked about that. I think we had a good episode. We got a bit riled up, which the times call for. And then there were two episodes of the reality show that Amy and I participated in. Mm-hmm. The one I was on, the title was, Are We in World War III? So talking about the current situation with Hamas in the context of other worldwide conflicts. So 9/11, obviously, going back 20 years, but 22 years. Ukraine, the situation with Russia, the Chinese buildup of their military, the taking of Hong Kong and the risks of losing Taiwan. So we talked about that question, are we in World War III? The spoiler alert is my answer is no, nothing like it. But that doesn't diminish the significance of all of those other developments and how important it is that we do what needs to be done. Now, Amy, you were on an episode of the reality show.
Yeah. I imparted my wisdom. I brought out my best Julia Sugarbaker. Julia Sugarbaker is a character in a sitcom in the 80s called Designing Women. And it was... what was I'm forgetting the actress's name, but she was really, really good. Something like Dixie Porter or something. Anyway, but she was a real firebrand. She would dress people down. She would right the injustice. She would, she would give a whole speech in like this really morally righteous kind of lecture to people. And tell them how much they sucked, but in the most eloquent way. So
maybe I need to watch that show sometime.
Oh yeah, I should actually. Yeah, we should look into it. It was hit and miss. It wasn't every episode that Julia Sugarbaker gave a speech, but when she did, I was so enamored of her, and I really wanted to be her. So I brought out that sort of character in the ARC UK on Friday, when I talked about the women of Hamas and, how they need to check themselves before they wreck themselves in that way. I didn't say it that way, but it was impassioned, I'll just say.
Yeah, I thought you brought some much needed perspective, a unique perspective to the show.
That's true.
That you participated in. Folks, links to those are in the show notes, description on YouTube. On Facebook, I'll probably have to refresh them afterwards. They always scrap my updates on Facebook once we start the show, and then I got to stick them in again. But on the YouTube side, where I need your help anyway, we need more people to watch on YouTube because I've got to get my view counts up. We've got a lot of people listening to the podcasts after the fact, and that's cool. Thank you. That's why we put them on every podcast platform out there. But if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, click the like button, so that registers and YouTube shows the show to a few more people on their homepage when they go browsing around. We got one already showed up there. Thank you for hitting that. It doesn't tell me who, so I'm just going to thank you. You know who you are for hitting that like button. Very much appreciated. Two other things in this category of what are we listening to, what are we watching this week. I've mentioned already the show that Sam Harris did, one of his podcasts on his Waking Up series. The Sin of Moral Equivalence. Good episode. Even if you're not a Sam Harris fan, give that one a listen. For all of my criticisms of Harris, and there have been many, as you've heard, it was a well-done episode. If you are a Sam Harris hater, because a lot of people in my audience are Sam Harris haters, and there are things to hate about Sam Harris, I'm not being critical, but listen to that. It may give you at least a little respect for the man. It turns out Yaron Brook just yesterday, was it? Did an episode on moral equivalence as well.
Yes, just yesterday.
And I didn't link that one. I need to put that in the links as well. So it's good because it's one of the questions that comes up for folks who don't know much about the history. Well, haven't both sides been bad in this conflict? And I get it. I get it because I understand the historical narrative that's out there. And I'm not going to get into it right now.
Yeah.
But that makes these episodes on moral equivalence important. Now, as far as straightening out the history, Yaron's show today that he did a few hours ago will give you some of a handle on that. If you really want to get it, you should listen to his whole series on the history of the Middle East. But the one that he did today is very good in that regard. There was also an outstanding, this was interesting, an outstanding episode of Barry Weiss's podcast, Honestly. Given politics in the United States right now, including the absolutely insane fact that it looks like the contenders for the next presidential election are going to be the same as the last one.
Woo!
What? Joe Biden, the oldest president of the United States ever, or will be if he runs, and apparently he will, is going to be up against 45. The 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, again.
So we'll have Joe Biden for another 4 years. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So as we all try to figure this out, Barry Weiss had a very sane voice on her show, Condoleezza Rice.
Oh, yeah. I need to listen to that.
Well, what happened was she scheduled this interview with Condoleezza Rice. We're going to talk about the present political situation in America. Mm-hmm. What the hell's going on? From somebody, and Condoleezza Rice is a great voice. She's very smart. I wish she would run for president. She'd be a better president than really anybody I can think of going back to the 1980s. But they were going to talk about that. And then the Hamas action in Israel happens, I think, 2 days before they actually did the interview. So, a few days ago. And so they changed it entirely. And they ended up, though the topic is the new axis of evil, Condoleezza Rice on war in Israel and a changed world. If you want to hear very intelligent people talking about the present situation in ways that are both rational and passionate, it's a great episode to listen to. I highly recommend it.
Yes.
Good stuff. But all that war, ARC UK says we're not going to do any other shows. Robert, you're not going to be doing Life on Earth, for example. You and Amy will not be doing your usual kind of shows. We're just focusing on the war and everything related to it. But I've been having conversations with folks, and I've been working on an episode, for example, on loss and suffering, including why other philosophies, Stoicism, Buddhism, or pop philosophies like Jordan Peterson, seem to address loss and suffering, mortality, the difficult areas of life, in ways that, like Ayn Rand's philosophy don't. Mark Pellegrino mentioned that on one of the shows he and I were participating in, and I think it's a great question. What does objectivism have to say? When life is just hard, and not hard in ways in which I need to be better and get through it, but ways that are just hard. Facing the passing of somebody that you care about, or consider the war, the tragic death, the unbelievable things that have happened in Israel. What does objectivism have to offer them? So these topics related to the war combined with what do we have to say, though, about that? And the notes that I've been putting together for that have got me thinking, it's got a lot of people very sad. A lot of people have asked me, I shouldn't say a lot, several people have asked me my thoughts on, what do we do when the world's falling apart? And by world falling apart, a lot of that has to do with it's hard to even say it, the pro-Palestine demonstrations, and some of them rise to the level of celebrations that have been going on, and not just by Middle Eastern or Palestinian organizations, but American college kids and kids in other countries. And they're not kids, these are adults. It's just hard to regard them as actual men and women. What do we have to say about that? So as part of putting my notes together, I had to revisit my Substack. Well, the last thing that was posted on my Substack was the Ever-Growing Benevolence Bookshelf, my list of the many, many books that you can read or listen to on Audible, or just read the synopses or look at their graphs and stats that will contradict the narrative that things are getting worse. By almost every measure, everything is getting better all the time. People are living longer, they're living better, their living standards are up, their incomes are up, their level of health span, in other words, the parts of their lives they're living where they're actually healthy, the amount of work opportunity people have, the amount of travel that people do, countless measures of human flourishing. And there's been a few that took a dip the last few years. The classic is deaths of despair, whether suicidal or addictions, opioid addictions, fentanyl being the big one right now. So I'm not saying everything is rosy, but to compare now to 20 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago, It's never been a better time to be alive.
It's true.
But war is hell, and war is happening. It's very sad. One of my Facebook friends just posted a cousin of his lost a daughter over the last week. Kidnapped and then ended up dead. How can you talk about things are better than ever at the same time as war is going? And the answer is you don't. The answer is you've got to put it all in context. So for those folks who are not directly facing tragedy, but are just looking out at the world and thinking, everything's going to hell. It's not. 99.7% of the world is doing just fine. But the news doesn't share stories about people who are doing just fine. Came up on one of the shows recently. What's going on in Hamtramck and Dearborn, Michigan? I don't know if you know anything about Dearborn, Michigan, but Dearborn, Michigan, I believe in the United States, it's the greatest concentration of people of Islam. We have a Middle Eastern population. You heard me say the word we. Well, where we are broadcasting from right now, they're right down the street.
Yeah.
You know, 5-10 miles away from Motown here.
Yeah, we have a lot of really excellent Middle Eastern restaurants around here.
Surprising number.
Although I at this point, I feel like I need to call them first and say, excuse me, do you support Israel? Because if you don't, I can't order.
Yep.
But I don't know if it's the largest concentration. I think there was a mosque in Tennessee or something like that. And so so in other words, we're one of the top in terms of population.
Yeah. So it's very hard to put all that in context. Say it's very big. It's the headline. It's the biggest news in the world right now. But it's also very small in terms of what else is going on in the world and what real life is like for real people. So revisiting my Substack, I had to put together, I put together another list on Substack of additional news sources that people should be visiting, good news sources. Not to avoid the bad news of the day, but simply to get a handle on what's what, how big each is. So that's out on my Substack. Link is in my show notes. More sources for good news in 2023. And I mentioned birthdays. Well, it was Leonard Peikoff's birthday today. A friend of mine, good friend of mine, Kelly, is having her birthday today, the same day as Leonard Peikoff.
Yes.
My daughter's stepfather, you figure out what that means, one of our best friends.
Yes.
Total top of the list.
Yep.
Has his birthday next week. And my birthday's this week.
Tomorrow. Yeah. I mean, sometime this week.
No, it's funny. I joke about how I have no privacy concerns. Everything's in my real name. Everything that I do is out there. Everybody knows everything about me. But Amy, you're the one who always blows everybody's privacy even more than I do. We've got people in the chat right now who use screen names, and you always shout them out by their real name.
I think they're okay with it. Let me know if you're not.
Folks, let us know if you are one of those folks who does not want you.
If I call you by your first name in the chat
true.
or whatever.
You only use first names, so
it's all right.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever. My birthday is this week, yes. And I mentioned that in connection with this, but also last night we had Glow, Great Lakes Objectivists.
Yes.
And the theme for the evening was what, Leonard Peikoff? No. Was it Atlas Shrugged?
It was our favorite philosopher, Robert Nasir.
They did my birthday. That was super cool too. But we've been waiting to hear, folks. You are regular listeners know we did a fundraiser. Amy's doing a fundraiser. It's an ongoing fundraiser. It's still going on out there.
Yes, it is.
For another philosophy professor. How many philosophers are we going to talk about in this show? Well, the third one to talk about, I guess 4 because you're counting me, Dr. Robert Garmong.
Yes.
And a lot of you out there have been supporting this guy. In China. He's an American, but he's in China. He's a Chinese wife. Has a son in China. And he develops cancer, neuroendocrine cancer, difficult to treat, but treatable.
Well, it's rare, but it's treatable.
And Amy starts a fundraiser to help him out because he can't work while he's getting the treatment. In some ways, medicine in China has more capitalist elements than it does in the States.
In some ways.
In some ways. So he's having to pay for a lot.
Yeah.
Not able to work while all this is going on. There's no workman's comp or anything in China. So Amy starts a fundraiser. You guys come through big time.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
And it's great because you may know we interviewed him on several of our shows, and not even always on his condition, but just interesting things about China. Interesting things about that part of the world, the relation of China to Japan and South Korea and other countries. And then he fell off the map.
He fell off the map.
Like 10 days ago, couldn't reach him, couldn't find him. It's like, oh my God, did the worst happen?
Well, it was one of those. It was one of those suffering moments.
Yeah, it got really hard on you, but then you showed some tenacity, and well, you were showing it all along, but
yes,
you found a way to get at least some information.
Yes, I found a relative of his, and I conversed with her, and then, it was. And
it turned out that he had another medical lapse that was not directly related to the cancer, but something related to something that he knew might be an issue and would have to be treated eventually. Yeah. And it came to a head.
I'll be posting on GoFundMe pretty soon here, either tonight or tomorrow, about what's been going on. A lot of people already know because he checked into Facebook already. Thank goodness. And I conversed with him today at around 5 a.m. our time here.
So he finally was able to communicate with us. And that has been just a huge relief.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Yes, such an amazing turn of events.
And I mention that not only because it's another chance to say you should donate. Look on the screen there, or I guess if people are listening to the audio, I should say tinyurl.com/Garmong. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I mentioned that my daughter's stepfather, Mark, is having a birthday this week coming up. Mark just had heart surgery. He just had a valve replaced.
Yes.
Robert Garmong just had a life-saving procedure over the last week. And he's been having what will be life-saving procedures over the course of the year. Mark just had a valve replaced in his heart. Well, I mentioned he's my daughter's stepfather. My daughter's mother just had a life-saving procedure 2 days ago. Removal of a clot that, people get clots, whatever. No, this was the kind that if it had been in the wrong place, it would have been all over. And even where it was, if it hadn't been treated, it would have been all over. No, lives are being saved on a regular basis, much more often than I would like to see it necessary. But good news, absolutely good news. Now, happily, I'm having a birthday this week, and nothing bad ever happens to me, to steal a line from Oingo Boingo. I seem to be bulletproof. We were talking about that. I've had, things, maybe. So, folks, you count on me living forever. Because all the evidence is that I will live forever. I've never died before. I don't think it's going to happen.
You've never died before. Oh, that's good.
So you see why I could not resist. For the folks out there who are finding it hard to find or see or really experience as real the good news out there, a few more good news sources out there. The good news sources I'm putting out there, you'll find them again in the show description, the links. They're on my Substack as well if you're not already signed up for my Substack, robertnasir.substack.com. This is not the kind of good news you go to where they share a lot of cute stories. I love those. Those are fun. They go out and find, some kid who had a science project and it was really awesome, or a lemonade stand that supported the local hospital, or there's a million good news stories out there like that. And that is cool, and you should look at them, but this is not that. No, the good news sources I'm sharing with you out there, the kind that are run by the Human Progress Organization and the Cato groups. This is big news, serious news, economic news, science news, news around the world. And when you look at this stuff and then you go to an aggregator, I usually use Google News, and you look at all the bad news of the day, Don't treat it as a balancing act and, oh, I've got a lot of bad news, I need to read some good news. Or, oh, I read the good news, I've got to read some bad news. What I want you to do, I've said every time you catch yourself using the word balance, replace it with the word integrate. And the reason why, and this is my bottom line for tonight, if we're going to fight, if we're going to be advocates, in our case, advocates for Israel, but advocates for the good guys in any of these battles, if you're going to be an advocate for the Ukraine, if you're going to be an advocate for anything, you can't win if you only know what you're fighting. You can't win. You won't win. You will fail. You will lose. Unless you also know what you are fighting for. This is true in your own personal life as you're setting your goals, your aspirations. Oh, well, I want to not get sick and I want to not go broke. And I do. Or if you're talking about world events. Oh, I want to not get attacked by Hamas. Oh, I want to not give away the Crimea to the Russians. No, you have got to know what you're fighting for. The reason why Ukraine has done so well... Oh, did we lose our video there?
Mm-hmm. We did lose the video.
What the heck? Okay, sorry about that, folks. Don't know why that happened. But yes, thank you.
Here we are.
It's one of those days. It's challenging times. I told you it's challenging times. Real tragedy, like clicking my video off, apparently. Sorry about that. Nothing new in this. You've got to know what you're fighting for. I just think we forget it sometimes. And that is why it's also harder to feel the good news, to feel the reasons, the real, out there in the real world reasons for optimism and benevolence and happiness, the happiness that you so richly deserve.
So a word to the wise also is, you do, and this is something I've got to do a little bit more, is take the mind-body integration more seriously. So if there is a stressful event going on, if there is something that has riled you up, if there is something that has made you feel less hopeful about the world, and that's distracting you, so it's basically affecting your work, affecting how you live day to day, how you're productive, how you have a sense of pride in what you do, and it's affecting your perspective on life. It's really important to find physical pleasure. So, and what I mean by that is exercise. I know it's not necessarily physical pleasure for everybody, but but go swimming, go sit in a hot tub, get a massage, take a nice hot bath, do something physically relaxing, do some yoga, whatever it is that, go for a walk in a beautiful, looking at the beautiful sunset in a pretty forest that is filled with changing leaves, enjoy nature, all of that. Eat good food, healthy food, not junk. So be very cognizant of those sorts of things that will give you pleasure and will help you keep the perspective that you need in life to keep yourself going, to keep yourself motivated, to keep yourself happy. Yeah, folks who follow us on the socials know we've been going out a lot lately. We've been doing a lot of things, live concerts and movies, and it's interesting because sometimes I feel maybe I shouldn't be doing so much of that. I should be building more, creating more, doing more long-range actions. But then I have those experiences that remind me, well, this is what we're fighting for. These moments are an end in themselves. Yes.
It's not just pleasure, but it's that sensation of life as an end in itself. I forget that sometimes. I'll think, when was the last time I put on a pair of headphones or sat in front of a good pair of speakers and listened to a record album not just a song. You catch a song here and there, or you listen to music in the car, but really took in a piece of music and had that experience of, this is it. This is what it's about. This is life as an end in itself. There's a conversation going on there talking about integration in the chat. Christopher Smith says, I like balance, but integration is the key for the rational animal. Absolutely right. Speaking of music, incidentally, if you're a songwriter, balance and integration, definitely go more for the integration than the balance. You can write a song with a verse, chorus, or you can write a song that is a suite of several different sections. But if you can integrate, if you can take the themes that you used in your verse and have a little bit of it in the chorus, or something from the chorus and have a little bit of that in the verses, or do a suite where each of the sections contains a little bit of what's in the other sections. In other words, if you can integrate and not just balance, you can create even more masterful music. And I think that applies to art. I think that applies to romance. I think it applies to everything.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been doing, it's over there, I can't reach it right now, but I've been making myself a scarf using the broomstick lace pattern. It's basically a hybrid of crochet and knitting. It's more crochet than knitting, but basically you use a big thick like 35 millimeter knitting needle that looks like as thick as a broomstick, right? That's why it's called broomstick lace. And you use that in creating loops that then basically you hook into every 5 stitches or so to create a particular pattern with crochet. Anyway, it's really nice. And I've been doing that, and I've been really getting a lot of enjoyment out of that. Just sitting there listening to something good and crocheting. That's sort of a self-soothing kind of thing. But, we were talking at Great Lakes Subjectivist meeting last night about how it's really lovely to organize something, to redirect the things that you own, the things that you're going to be using in the future. I organized a little bit last night of some of my flamenco attire, skirts and tops and things like that, dance wear. And I put all that together in one spot, and I just felt real nice about it. Like all of it there is in one spot and it's organized. I can go to that in the future and pick out something. Anyway, it was just a great feeling. It was a real pleasurable feeling in terms of my inner organizational state. Yeah, there's pleasure in epistemology, I'll say that. Epistemological pleasure.
Yeah, it's one of those things I'm all too quick to discount or dismiss, and I really shouldn't, which are crafts. Nowadays, modern times, I'm not going to knit my own scarf because I can buy a scarf. Well, yeah, but it's not the same thing at all. And it's not just, I handcrafted this, and so I'm proud of it and I enjoy wearing it more. That's part of it. But the work itself ends up being an end in itself. But there's better things you could do with that time. Actually, it turns out there's not, because it is of enormous value. I've just noticed that I've been missing Frank Grail's comments because my windows were not overlapping properly. I was not seeing the Facebook chat, only the YouTube one. So sorry about that, Frank, who says his real last name is not Grail. Yes, I'm familiar with that. But, all of us guitar players, we all have a stage name, except me. Maybe I should have a stage name. I don't know. I'll think about that the next time I go out. I'll just change my name to Rusty. Rusty Strings. Yes. So, folks, I hope you are subscribed to my Substack and you are following us on the socials, and that you find our integration, our balance, at least somewhat refreshing or heartening. Again, if you're going to fight, you got to know what you're fighting for. And you've got to be willing, if not to share that stuff, then at least make sure you really are getting it, that you're doing as much as you can that is worth doing. Because there's plenty. There's endless things out there that are worth doing, and it's because our lives are rich, because our lives are an end in themselves, that we then fight for the freedom to live those lives, and why we ally ourselves with other people who are in that fight, who are waging those wars, who are having those battles. It's why we send money to support people in Ukraine. And I'm sure we will in Israel as well. It's why we fight. It's why we speak out. It's why we live. Our lives are an end in themselves. I know some friends who don't experience that, and I'm, through my writing and through some of these shows, working to help with that. But that's the bottom line. There is nothing more important going on in this world than you living your own best life. Fortunately, it's not either or. If you're living well, now you're in a position to engage with other people, ultimately around the world, and be a part of it all, as you well can and deserve to be. Folks, that's my message. Thank you for joining us. Challenging times. What I want to see is people taking what's going on very, very seriously, but also not letting it stop you from living your own best life. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being in the chat. Anything else we should be talking about or answering there, Amy?
No, Christopher. Well, Christopher says in the chat, cognitive consonance.
Love that.
That's a nice phrase there.
As opposed to really cognitive dissonance. Excellent.
And, but yeah, go out there, make yourself some lemon bars.
Lemon bars. Food is so obviously an end in itself, and it affirms that life is an end in itself. The only downside is that, you become an adult in 2023, and, they just let you go to the grocery store and buy ice cream for dinner or anything else you want. And it turns out you have to parent yourself. Man, that's not fair. That's just wrong.
Yeah, and I'll end with kind of like a little critique of a quote from Nietzsche, which
Nietzsche,
is...
bring back... Happy birthday, Nietzsche. What did Nietzsche say?
Happy birthday, Nietzsche. Well, first of all, let me just tell you about Nietzsche, because he was a weirdo. His dad died when he was 35, and there was this concept called like Platonic reoccurrence or something like that Nietzsche believed in. And so leading up to his 35th birthday... he would always be like really terrified of turning another a year over and reaching the age of 35, because he thought he was going to die at the age of 35, because he's a he's a weirdo. So this is one quote about suffering. It says, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering."
Thank you, Nietzsche. That's not very teaching. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. That's not an unusual thought. How many philosophies before Ayn Rand, before Objectivism, told you that your life was an end in itself?
Nobody.
And there are great minds who have tried to address this issue. It's what I'm going to be talking about when I finish writing this essay on loss and suffering and what Objectivism has to offer. It makes me think of the quote from Viktor Frankl: "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning. Well, Frankl was all about people finding meaning, finding purpose in life.
Man's search for meaning.
Man's search for meaning. Being a concentration camp survivor, he saw the people who were most likely to survive the experience were the people who were living for something, who had a purpose, who found some meaning despite the suffering or even in the suffering. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that Nietzsche said that kind of thing as well. And again, Frankl and Nietzsche and a lot of people have offered some thoughts on these, whether you agree with them or not. They're addressing areas that are not as obvious in Objectivism. I think the answers are out there, but people do find a certain comfort in Stoicism, Buddhism, in people like Jordan Peterson, that we're not always as able to offer them. And I think we should, and I think we will. I think you will join us on that journey and that adventure. And I thank you for being here.
Yeah, and I'm going to end one more time.
Yes.
So to live is not to suffer. If you are rational, living consciously, curating your time, choosing your values, finding meaning in your values, understanding why you have them, and, planning out your day in a way that is actually pleasant and pleasurable and meaningful. And Ayn Rand said, of course, the purpose of morality. And again, morality and objectivism is not just dealing with other people. It's how you deal with yourself, how you are a friend to yourself, how you are selfish. So the purpose of morality is to teach you not to suffer and die, but to enjoy yourself and live.
Perfect. I've got one more truth bomb for you. We're going to go back and forth. We'll be doing this till midnight. I know people in the libertarian movement and even in objectivism who don't fully get that individual rights, political, economic rights, are a social concept. I've had people deny that. They've said flat out, oh, no, it's intrinsic in human nature. Well, it's human nature in a group, but there are no individual rights, for example, on a deserted island. The concept doesn't come up. Oh, no, it's out there. Really, it is, somehow. And those same people are usually the ones who say, oh, morality, well, that's just about how you treat others. Mm-hmm. That's just, about somebody stopping you from doing what you want to do or violating other people's rights. It's amazing. It's the same people who say, oh, well, individual rights can't be a social concept. It must somehow be intrinsic. And yet morality is all about other people. And Amy, as you said, you're absolutely right. The most important aspects of morality are the guidance it gives you in making your own decisions for your own sake.
Yes.
So true. So I'm glad you said that. It's a good place to end it. Folks, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. You are the best audience in podcasting. If you have any suggestions for future shows, put them in the chat. Put them in the 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir Facebook group. Links to all of that at robertnasir.com. On that page, you'll also see a link to Patreon and a link to PayPal if you want to contribute to the continued success of this outrageous show that we present every week. I guess if you count the Thursday show, twice a week. You really are the best, and that is why I will sign off by saying, Amy and I wish you all of the happiness that you so richly deserve. We are hoping, we're rooting for you to find that success, that flourishing. And as much as anything else, I don't know, maybe a little extra, we wish you love.